Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Project Egg Show. Today, we have the honor of being able to speak with Bobby Umar, an inspirational speaker, coach, and one of the most prolific advocates of heart-based leadership in North America. It's incredible because Inc. magazine actually named him one of the top 100 leadership speakers alongside such noteworthy giants as Richard Branson, Brené Brown, John Maxwell, and Robin Sharma. Bobby's a 5 times TEDx speaker and one of the top social media influencers in the world with over 500,000 followers. He's been named the second best business coach to follow on Twitter and the 4th best leadership influencer according to Cred. Bobby's an author of 3 different books, including an international #1 bestseller, and he's a frequent Huffington Post contributor and the host of a weekly tweet chat called The Power of Connection that has reached over 65 million impressions weekly. To date, his social media influence has garnered over 1 billion with a B impressions. Bobby, that is a very impressive resume, along with tons of other things that I didn't even get to mention. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It is truly a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Thank you, Ben. I'm delighted to be here and excited to share and help people.
Fantastic. So before the interview started and went live, Bobby and I were talking about, giving something away for free and, really teasing it up for you beautiful ladies and gentlemen so that y'all would stick with us all the way till the end. And there is absolutely a freebie that will be available to you at the end, but you got to stick all the way till the end because we'll tell you what it is and how to get it. So with that being said, Bobby, let's jump right in. What is your story?
So my story is that I was a lost leader. I was someone who felt lost and stuck and unfulfilled. So I started out my career in engineering because I was good at math and physics, and my dad's like, "Well, be an engineer. It's a good job." But I did that for several years, and I felt lost. I felt like I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't having a good time. I wasn't passionate about my work. And so while I was there, I decided to start a musical theater company, started producing and directing musicals. And I was like, well, that's weird. I think I started on the side. I started building that up. And so I was getting involved in performance and things like that. But it wasn't enough to fulfill me because I felt that it was just too much work, too much stress for what I was trying to do and the impact I was having. So then after that, I did my MBA and I went into brand marketing. And again, that was really great in many ways, but I was working 80 hours a week and I didn't have a work-life balance. And again, I felt kind of stuck. And so what I can tell you is that my story is all about feeling lost, stuck, unfulfilled in my path along the way. And I finally, at the age of was it 35, 36 years old, I finally decided to dive into my personal brand, to figure out what I want to do, take ownership of my story and my path, define my own values and success and what it meant to me. And that's when I decided, what's perfect for me is what I'm doing now, which is to become a professional speaker and coach. And I've been doing that ever since, and I haven't looked back. And so that story is taking me along the way in terms of 4 different career paths, but it also allows me a chance to understand that everyone is going through the same stuff. We all, follow a path of success defined by the people, whether it's our parents or corporations or society. We all feel lost in our job sometimes because it doesn't align with our values. We all feel stuck or unfulfilled because we create a narrative for ourselves that it's not the best one for us. And, my message for the world is to let people know it's okay to feel this way, but it's not okay to do nothing about it. And that's why I'm here. And so my story is taking me to that journey. And then the last 10, 15 years of speaking has been great. I've traveled around the world. I've spoken to 5 TEDx talks. I've been able to help thousands, if not more, people with, my messages, my stories, and my impact. And I think that's been really great. And now I'm continuing to do a lot of stuff on social media with Twitter, LinkedIn, my Patreon page, all of my communities that I have to really give people content and give them some inspiration to help them, build better lives, better businesses.
Let's jump back into your childhood.
Oh, okay.
What did it smell like?
What did it smell like? I'd say it smelled like 2 things. One, it smelled like the amazing cooking of my mom. So my mom was an incredible cook, She is an incredible cook. I shouldn't say she's all around. But she was the type of mom that was so good at cooking that all the other moms would invite her to cook something for their parties, and she would always do it. And that's how good she was. And so I remember the smells of curry and rice and all the stuff coming from the kitchen that was always there. I'd always come in and be like, "Oh, mom, you're cooking this," and like she's like, "Wow, the nose knows." And so that's it. And then the other one would be trees, like nature, the smell of trees, nature. Because I grew up in a small town, a lot of trees, a lot of forests where we would walk around in the woods, and I really love nature. I really love water, trees, grass, and so for me, that smell also something that when I think of my childhood, that's what I remember.
I believe you mentioned that you grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
What was that like for you, and how did that shape your identity from a young age?
Yeah, so I think one thing that the small town piece taught me was uh, being aware of my own diversity and my own background. Because the truth is, um, I I kind of blended in, and I was always good at blending in with people. But at the time, there wasn't very many minorities in the area that I lived in. But I definitely was aware of the fact that I was, and so learning to blend in and integrate, as opposed to being insular and exclusive in my own kind of group. I realized it was important to really integrate with everybody. So for me, that was the big thing. The second thing is just the idea of we took pride in the fact that we were very friendly folk. People from a small town, oh, we're all friendly folk, and I know that person down the hill and down at that house, and that's how people are. But I take that to heart. I take that to heart in terms of being a good neighbor, being a good community member, being a good, friendly person, and because people, and no matter how bad my day is, whatever it is, there's no reason for me to be rude to the grocery clerk or be rude to someone on the street. Like, just be nice. So I'm really big on the kind of the small town community kindness that I espouse, even when I talk to 500,000 followers on social media, or even when I talk to a crowd of 1,000, 2,000 people when I speak. So that to me are probably the two biggest things.
What was your relationship like with your parents, and how did that evolve over time?
Well, that's a good question. I would say that my relationship was rebellious. I think that's probably the biggest thing I can tell you. Um, I was a I mean, I was a smart kid. I got great grades, and I skipped a grade, and I was my family's most, let's call it, quote unquote, successful child in terms of my grades and academics, which was good because it gave me a little bit of freedom, but it also created situations where when my parents said stuff that I disagreed with, even when I was 7, I would call it out, and it got me in trouble many, many, many times. And then later on, I became even more rebellious in terms of where I want to go to university, I want to switch careers, and then I wanted to marry my wife, and she's Caucasian, so that was a huge deal. So all those different things, it definitely affected the way I was with my family. At the same time, there was also a fierce loyalty and love with the family. So like I'm very loyal to them, and they're still part of my life, and they live close by, within less than 45 minutes away, and so we still spend a lot of time together. So they've affected my life well, in the sense of I definitely appreciate the importance of family and being close to family, as opposed to being far away. Like I never would want to live in Australia and they live in England and someone else lives in Canada. Like I wouldn't want that for my family. I think it's good to be really close together, or at least gather together. And then the other thing, the rebellious thing, that really turned into the whole idea of standing up for what I believe in, what I'm all about. Because my values are different than theirs. I mean, there's some that we share, like family, for example, but there's ones that are different. And so I have to stand up for what I believe in for myself, my wife, my children, my lifestyle, which is a little bit different. And so that rebelliousness has turned into standing for myself and what I believe in. And so that's a big piece of who I am. I'm definitely a type of person that stands up for what I believe in, whether it's socially, business, politically. I'm very big on that.
As you were growing up and maturing, what were some of the activities that you found yourself participating in voluntarily?
Well, I mean, I was always it's funny, I was always the person who would facilitate activities with a bunch of kids. So, okay, so guys, let's play hide and seek. here's what we're gonna do. Okay, here's the rules. And I would explain the rules of the game, whether it was hide and seek or tag or some other new game we're playing, and we would start playing the game, right? Whether they're older kids or younger kids, that would be. So I was a bit of a facilitator even back in the day. I think that's probably. And sorry, repeat the question again.
Yeah, just what activities did you like to participate in? Like, what
Yeah.
were your hobbies?
So that was one thing, and then I definitely loved I loved playing sports. I played baseball, hockey, like ball hockey every day outside. Always being outside was a big part of my life. I definitely got into really got into pop culture, so movies and music like all the time. Then later on, I got into musical theater. That became a huge part of what I did. And then the other one that I never noticed was entrepreneurship, because when I was a kid, and reflecting now, I can say, oh, that's so obvious. But back then, I didn't realize. But I would be the type of kid that come up with an idea. Like we would collect raspberries, in the woods, and then we decided to start selling them door to door to people because we collected for them, and that was entrepreneurial. When I was in high school, I did this thing called junior achievement, where you go in grade 10, 11, 12, and you start your own companies. And I loved doing that. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed that. Again, didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur, but I clearly was into that kind of stuff. So I think the entrepreneurship thing was always there too, which is kind of interesting. But I was always into things that had to do with people. I was always into things that had to do with. I love board games. I still do. Strategizing and thinking, collaborating with people, like all that kind of stuff has been a big part of what I was doing growing up. So those are some of the activities I was involved. I mean, the truth is I was involved with a lot of stuff. So it's kind of like, then that led to the whole jack of all trades, master of none issue that I had later on. I definitely involved myself in a lot of things, both my family, with my friends, and at school.
So it seems like some of the recurring themes here are people and facilitation. And then you also mentioned board games.
Yeah.
Why do you think those three things really stood out? And where do you think the passion for those came from?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I think that the people thing came from my parents. Both my mom and dad were extremely social people. So my mom was the social butterfly of the entire community. She was the one that everyone would call for advice. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, she was always on the phone for a couple hours in the morning because all her friends were calling her. And my dad, same thing. We'd go to a party. It would be a party. He would be the social guy, telling jokes and getting along with everybody. No matter who you were, he can get along with anybody. And so I think that they definitely influenced me in that sense, in terms of the people thing. Facilitation, I think that's a natural thing. Like I think leadership is something that we're born with, but also something we can acquire. But I always was a natural facilitator. I was always naturally good with people as an extrovert, and so it's just something I took on. The ability to facilitate and be a leader was something that was always there with me. And I don't. There was hardly any followership. It was mostly leading stuff for the most part. So that was a natural thing for me.
When you were making the decision to leave high school or graduate from high school and deciding what you wanted to do next, what was that decision-making process like for you, and how did you ultimately decide? Like, what swayed you to decide on the path that you went into afterwards?
Well, at the time, I can tell you that I did it wrongly, but because back then I wasn't thinking about it. I mean, that's why my message for many people is to dive in your personal brand and know who you are and define your own path of success. But at the time, my father influenced me in terms of saying that you need to get a job like a doctor, lawyer, engineer type job, something professional. Use your brain, okay. But for me, the main thing I had chosen was science and engineering because I was good at math and physics. Like math and physics were things I was good at. I mean, I liked it too, but I didn't realize, did I like it enough to do it for my whole life? I loved it. I got great marks. And so because of that, I chose initially to go into engineering for university. I did a couple of those career choices types of analytical programs. And what was interesting is when I did that, I got zero results. It was fascinating because the counselor, my counselor in high school was like, "That's weird." It's like, what? I have no path. What do I do? He's like, because it was based on like 15 different dimensions of work and the things you care about. So we said, let's take away a couple of dimensions and then see what we get. And then 0 results. Then we took away a few more, 0 results. Then we got down to 8 out of the 15 dimensions. And then the list of like 60 jobs showed up. And they were all over the place, like engineer, psychologist, salesman, farmer. Like it was just so crazy. They were so diverse. And I didn't even think about what's the connecting piece of those ones. And it turned out to be people. Every single one of those things had to do with people. I wasn't seeing that. I was only thinking about the math and physics. And so I went into engineering. And so that's kind of how I chose. The other thing that affected my path was because of my marks, I got scholarships. And so the place that offered me the most scholarship was kind of the place I decided to go because, I just kind of, money, wow. Like, I'm 17. Like at the time, I like, wow, money. And my dad's like, wow, money. So like, he's like, we should go there. So that's kind of how it all.
What do you think were some of the biggest takeaways from being an engineering major and going down that route?
Well, I think the biggest thing I took from engineering and I take today is problem solving, right? So one of the big things with engineers is problem solving. So identifying the issue, analyzing all the great deep analysis and all the key aspects of the problem, which also fits with my whole chess player thing. I was a big chess player, so I analyzed the 10 different moves, 10 moves ahead, all the different possibilities. So the problem solving aspect of engineering is something that I take with me today. So in any situation I come up with, I'm like always okay, analyze the situation. What are the different possible variables, and what are the different ways we can go? How do I evaluate the feasibility of those potential solutions, and then I make a decision. So when I make a decision on something, I thought about probably more than I think a lot of people when I talk to them. They haven't thought about all the different things. I've thought about a lot of different variables when I make my decision. So I mean, the problem solving piece has been really great from the engineering days.
When you were getting ready to start your theater project, what really gave you, maybe the inspiration is the right word, but the push to do it?
That's a good question. A lot of people don't ask you that. And the truth is, it was a pain point. I had been, I'd come back from university and I started doing theater shows. I started auditioning for musicals, and I did 3 of them, and every single one of them just annoyed me. There was just so much pain with how it was run, and I just didn't like it. There was all this. There were cliques, and there was misinformation, and there was like I just didn't like it was just very disjointed. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this better. And again, the leadership thing, facilitation comes into play. And then I found a guy who was also really awesome as a musical composer. I said, let's do our own thing, man. Like, let's just do our own thing. Because let's take everything that we hate about what we've seen and let's just do our own thing. And so then we launched our own thing and then did that for 4 years. And the beginning of it was, the pain point. It was just so annoying and painful to deal with these different organizations and how bad they were in so many different ways that it inspired me to do something better. We typically will do things because either a pain point that is bothering us that we want to move away from, or a bliss point that we see is so amazing we want to move towards it. And so for this one, it was the pain point that like, man, these musical theater companies are terrible. Let's do our own and let's do it the right way.
When on the chronology did you, I believe you said you got your MBA. When did that happen parallel to all these other things?
So I worked for 4 years as an engineer after I graduated university. And then during that time, I had also started the musical theater company. I ended the job and I dissolved the company the same time. I was like, now what's next? Like, I don't even know what's next. I've had a lot of different periods of transition in my life. So this one's like, what do I want to do next? So 4 years of work. And then I didn't want to go back to the same job. And other jobs wanted me to start the entry level. I was like, there's no way I want to start entry level. So then people suggested the MBA. I hadn't been thinking about it really, but then I did the GMAT and I got a really great score. I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. Because the truth is, 4 years in engineering really disillusioned my mindset. I didn't do it very well. I wasn't in my job, and in university too. Like university, the truth is, I felt I wasn't smart anymore. In high school, I was super smart, got scholarships, but in university, I lost my scholarships. I didn't get good grades. I scraped by with a really low GPA. I wasn't really top of my class, or I was really the bottom half of my class. And then when I worked in engineering, I also felt like I wasn't the best at what I was doing. And so I had a really low opinion of my intelligence at this point. It beats you down after 9 years, right? And then I remember in the gym, I was like, wow, that's a top like 96th percentile score. I was like, wow, that's pretty good. And then I did my MBA, and then all of a sudden, wow, okay, now and then I got straight A's and I was valedictorian. So like, wow, okay, so I'm smart again. But it was a big shift for me because I wasn't feeling very smart anymore. So the MBA thing happened after that, and it was a very transformative experience for me. It was like Bobby getting his mojo back again. That's really what it was. Because I was like, wow, okay. Because I was also leading, because I was president of the MBA Association, so I started getting leadership again. I was getting good marks. I was feeling confident. It was like a rebirth. So I love that part of my life.
When you were going through those 8 or 9 years of, seems like really not in the optimal space, not in the right space for you. It seems like at that point, that's when the biggest need for change is, or that's when the biggest need for change was. So for somebody else who may be in that funk, may have lost their mojo, because I think mojo is a great word. How can you provide, advice for them to where they can get out of it? Like how do they, one, recognize that they're in it, and two, how do they pivot out?
So number one, it's very difficult to recognize that you're stuck in that narrative. It's very difficult because narratives are powerful. We create them to make us feel better, right? So we'll be like, you know what? Yeah, my job's not that great, but I'm just grateful that I've got a pay. I'm getting paid and live in a nice apartment, and I have a girlfriend. Like that's fine, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to improve the job. Or hate my love my job, but life at home is really stressful. I don't really like it. I'm not going with my girlfriend or my wife. But again, you should try to fix that. Or even worse, hate my job, hate my life at home, but thank goodness for hot yoga or rock climbing or whatever, working out. We create these narratives. They're very powerful to get around. But I think the general thing I would say is that feeling you have in the morning, right? So in that morning, are you excited about your day? And it doesn't matter what day it is, Monday to Friday, but also Saturday, Sunday. Are you excited about your day? And how you feel about that day? Because if you wake up on Saturday and you're just grateful that, oh my gosh, it's not work, that's telling, right? If you wake up on Monday and you're like, oh God, work, that's telling, right? So or leaving work, oh man, I gotta spend the weekend doing all that stuff, that's telling. So it's a feeling. You have to understand that feeling. The second thing that you can do is to really, personal branding is great because the whole exercise of personal branding is to ask people in your network very specific, poignant questions. So I would ask like my 5 best friends, do you think what I'm doing is the best thing for me? What do you think I would love to do? What are my personality traits? Describe me in 3 words. So if I'm an engineer, for example, back in the day, and I went to all my best friends, they would say, Bobby, the 3 best words are, you love people, you love to have fun, and you're very creative. And so then the question is, where the hell does engineering fit in this thing, right? Because if they told me that back in the day, I would say, oh, okay, that doesn't really fit with what I'm doing. So 2 things is to really understand how you're feeling at every part of the day. The second thing I would say is that you should actually do a personal brand process to ask people and get feedback, and you'll be surprised. You might be surprised at the results. Now, how do you pivot? Well, the pivoting is where, that's the harder thing, but to dive into your personal brand and understand, where you think you're most aligned is very great. It's very insightful because then you can see all the different ways in which you could go. Like when I did it, I had 5 key personal brand elements: people, diversity, nurturing, persuasion, influence, and performing, presenting. And so that would lead to about 20, 30 different paths, but the one I chose was professional speaker. And it got me really excited because everything aligned very, very well, and I haven't looked back. The other thing, though, is you need to get a support network. So that includes your friends, or at least the people who support you, because there are going to be people, including your friends and your family, who are naysayers, and you can't turn them. They're like, why would you want to leave a stable job? Why would you want to like? And part of it is because they're expressing their own fears, their own insecurities, their own narratives, and you have to ignore those. You have to find the people who are willing to support you. That includes friends, family, but also, getting advisors, mentors, and even maybe hiring a coach to help you transition out of where you want to go. Because you're always going to have doubts, you're always going to have fears, you're always going to have your mindset telling you what you should do or can't do. And I just spoke to someone right before this who was like a seasoned 20-year professional, and she's having doubts. And she's like, we all have doubts. Like, I still have doubts, and that's okay. But you have to find a way around it. So if you want to transition, you need to have that support network. And then the third thing I'd say for transitioning is, come up with a plan. Don't just say, well, in your head, maybe I'll do this, maybe that. But a clear plan with a timeline and goals and milestones and measurable metrics that you're going to achieve. That's, you're failing the plan is planning to fail. So putting that plan together and writing it down is more likely to lead to your success to actually implement.
It's interesting when you talk about those questions, those personal branding questions, to really dive into your own narrative. I'm curious because how do you know whether the people that you're asking these questions to, how do you know if they're really seeing the full picture? Like they may be saying something, but you might be feeling something different on the inside. Like, how do you reconcile that?
Another great question. So that's really the personal branding process that I do and I coach others on. Essentially, there's three ways. One is you do your own self-assessment of everything: skills, interests, values, personality traits, all that kind of stuff. Number two, you get the assessment of others and you make it broad. So you talk to your boss, your people under you, your family, your cousins, your friends, like very diverse range of people. And then the third thing is online assessments. So you do a couple of computer personality trait programs. And how you reconcile is that once you have all this information, then you start to see the threads, right? So every single person in my network said Bobby's a people guy. Every single computer assessment said Bobby loves people. My own personal assessment says I love people. And so right away, boom, that's empowering because, okay, you know what? People is definitely one of the things. Now, if half my network says I'm analytical and the other half says I'm not, and one computer assessment says I'm analytical and the other says I'm not, I'm more big picture, then that's not really as compelling. So you do that whole process to validate and reconcile what are the ones that are really, really coming together. It's also similar to my fitness health journey. I was trying to get fit and eat better, and everyone gives you advice. You need to go low carb, gluten free, keto, and everyone gives you conflicting advice. But then at the end of the day, what is the thing that everyone's saying? Everyone says drink lots of water. Okay, got my water. I'm going to drink it. Right? Get more sleep. Okay, I will do that. Right? But only one person said keto, and one person said, intermittent fasting. Another person said, gluten. That's not as compelling. So you can start to see, you can reconcile the key threads that are part of what you should do.
So let's talk about once you had finished your MBA, what was and it seemed like at that point you were really diving more into your personal brand. What were some of those actionable steps that you took in order to really launch your personal brand and take it to that next level?
Well, actually, to be honest, I don't think it was there yet. I spent 4 years in brand marketing, and I loved it because of the people, and I loved it because of the influence and persuading people. So the marketing piece was kind of there, but it wasn't there yet. So what I can tell you is that after 4 years of that and working 80 hours a week, I realized that, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to build this I don't want to build someone else's dream. So after that, then the next transition was like, now what I really want to do. I've done engineering, I've done performing arts, I've done, brand marketing, what's next? So then that's when I dove into it. And so in terms of the actionable steps, as soon as I had an idea of what my plan was, which was to become a professional speaker, that's really where it all came into play. Then I had a very, I basically, I took a program actually that helped me. It basically helped me align my business plan. So I put together the strong business plan. I reached out to a bunch of people and I shared my ideas of what I want to do and how I want to do it. I did a ton of surveys and got crowdsourced a lot of information. So I spent about 3 to 6 months on this to really get a ton of information about what I'm trying to do to build the case. I mean, some people, they just launch their business and they go. I actually did a little bit longer. 3 to 6 months is what I did. And then I put together a plan. And putting together a plan is good because then you can see people will question you on it. They will, they will challenge certain things. And for me to evolve, like there was one part that I had in my plan that I eventually said, you know what, I'm going to let this one go. It's not going to fit. I need to focus more on these other two areas I want to focus on. And so for me, doing the plan and then getting a couple of mentors and coaches were really the key steps for me to launch my business. And then the other big thing that I think a lot of people are scared about is they spend too much time learning, but you have to like put stuff out there. So I finally like, okay, blah, here we go. Okay, here's what I'm doing. So I sent an email to like 3,000 people. I sent a brochure to 500 people. I said, here it is. I'm starting this. This is it. And that was, and then once that happened, the calls and the emails started coming in, and I never looked back.
So when you were figuring out your coaches and mentors who you actually wanted to get advice from, what process did you go through to really vet them and make sure that they were the people you actually wanted to learn from?
Well, the number one thing is really about, excuse me, who do I want to be like? So I think about someone that I want to be like in 5 or 10 or 20 years. And then that's a big thing. So, one of my mentors, like, well, he's really funny. He's a great speaker. He's a great host. He has insights. He engages people the way that I want to engage people. He sounds like a great mentor for me. And so that's kind of the person I reached. My first mentor actually was a successful speaker. So, and again, you don't pick them right away. You have a couple of meetings, you talk back and forth and see what they can give you. And then you have to assess in terms of, are they totally honest with you about stuff, or are they just BSing all the time? That's a big thing. Because some people you meet, they're like, I just find that I don't find the authenticity. I find a little bit more BSing. I prefer people who are honest but supportive. People who are willing to be completely transparent. So one of my first mentors, he wasn't as transparent about his struggles, but another person, my other mentor, he was. And I was like, oh, that's really great. Because everyone struggles at every age of their life. So for me, that was getting that was really important. I spoke to many people. The other thing that happens is that when you're out there networking, you meet lots of people, and some people who you don't expect to become mentors just end up becoming that way because you've had lots of conversations. But there's two parts. One was a targeted approach to finding the right person. Another one is being mindful of people you connect with and going deeper. And next thing you know, after 3 or 4 conversations, you decide, hey, listen, can we formalize this into a mentorship arrangement where I see you every quarter, every 6 months, and it evolves that way. So you should always be networking, always be connected. At ABC, always be connected, always be connecting. That's part of networking and why it's so important to me. But because you never know who's going to show up and become a mentor for you, or someone who you might mentor, or some sort of business possibility. So for me, that's kind of what I did.
Once you sent out those brochures and those emails and you put it out into the world, I am a speaker.
Yeah.
Yes. What steps did you take to start amplifying your reach and your brand?
Well, the first thing that I started to amplify things was with social media. I recognized that social media was kind of here to stay. I'd been on, Facebook for 2 years. I'd been on LinkedIn for several years, and it seemed to be a trend. And then all of a sudden, there's other ones like Twitter and Instagram, whatever. But at the time, I was like, okay, these are here to stay, and so I need to leverage this. And so I tried to understand how social media worked, and I realized that anyone who's a speaker and anyone actually who's an expert or a thought leader in their field has to create a brand on themselves. So I was talking about branding and personal branding. So how do you create a brand? Initially, I was saying branding was about networking, right? But I soon realized that it was more than just networking. It's more than that. And so I started creating content. I started blogging. I started doing videos. I started doing podcasts. I started trying to get seen as much as I could. I started tweeting. And so I put together a social media strategy around what I was trying to do, because I had a certain message for the world. And so by doing so, I wanted to get the word out about what it was I was talking about. Because if people are going to come hire me as a speaker on, let's say I'm an expert in networking, they're going to want to know, well, what does he do about networking? Does he have a book? Okay, so I wrote a book. Does he have any blog posts? Yeah, I had blog posts. I write a Huffington Post about networking. Like I started doing all that stuff because I knew that they're going to want to know, where's my cred? Because I didn't have the academic cred. Like I wasn't a certified coach or speaker. I wasn't a certified networker. I had an MBA and I had an engineering degree, right? And those were in the past. I had to create a brand around, a thought leadership brand around who I was. And so doing the content, doing the books, doing the articles, doing the speeches and panels and stuff, built a thought leadership brand around who I was. So that's really how I built it. And social media was really, for me, the biggest key. The other part is really the relationship networking piece, which we've already talked about, but that's also something I did to really build up my profile and get more leads.
When you were building your social media strategy, how did you balance the time it takes to do that right and the rest of your life in your business?
Well, one is integration. Can you integrate your life and integrate social media into it? So, for example, if I go to speak somewhere, then let's take a picture and then post it, right? So that's an integration piece. So I'll go speak at an event, and then when I'm coming back on the train or something, I'll just post about it. Or even during it, I'll sometimes would post, here's a live video of me doing this networking event, that type of thing. So integration, I think, is one thing. The second thing is, as part of your plan, you have to allocate how much time you're going to give to it. Now, depending on your job or your career or business, sometimes you want to spend more time on it. So being a speaker I think you should do more. If you were doing some very specific tech thing, like let's say you just make apps, then it wouldn't be so much. You still have to do something, right? I mean, and it doesn't take that much time, And the other thing you have to think about is your platforms. Like who's your target audience? Where are they playing? Excuse me. If you're like a baker or you're a fitness person, then Instagram's got to be part of your social media strategy, or even Pinterest for that matter, because visual is a big part of it. So you have to decide also where you want to spend your time. Some people just pick one platform if they don't have the time. I chose three. At the time, I had chosen Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. This is before Instagram was really big. So I chose those three, and that's kind of where I was doing it. Other people are just picking one. That's fine. So I was targeting about 10 hours a week of my time to do it. And the other thing that happens too is then you start to see what picks up, what flows. And I can tell you that after launching my Twitter strategy, my Facebook page, my newsletter, and everything else, the thing that picked up first was Twitter. And so within 6 months, I had about 5,000 followers. And then next thing you know, someone said, hey, we love what you talk about in terms of leadership. Can you come in and do a session for our volunteers about engagement? I'm like, yeah, sure I can. And I was like, wow, I got a gig right off of Twitter. That's amazing. And so I realized, okay, this is working. And so Twitter took off, and that's where I spend most of my time in terms of building it up. But now I'm spending more of my time on Instagram and LinkedIn.
What are some of the things that when you look back, you're really, really glad that you did?
I'm really, really glad I got fired from engineering. That was a really good one. Like I don't talk about it, but I basically let go after 4 years. And man, because I was young and I could have been stuck there for 10 years. Man, I was there for 4 years. I'm glad that happened. And then the second thing I'm really grateful for was actually, it's funny. Gratitude is so weird. When I launched when I left corporate and launched my own speaking business, two things happened. One was I became diabetic. So I got sick, had an anxiety attack, and I was feeling ill and sick. And so I went to my employer saying, look, I have diabetes now. It's really hurting me, and I need to scale back. And they weren't supportive. And I was like, okay, you know what? And then 2 months later, my wife almost died of E. coli, which was crazy. She was in ICU for a week, and I had to take care of her. And it just really gave me a lot of perspective. Like, wow, this is crazy. Like, how do we want to spend our lives stressing about these companies for all this time? And their support. Companies are supportive up to a point. At the end of the day, they care about the bottom line. So like, you could be amazing at your job, you can love what you're doing, you can be delivering, but if the bottom line is affected in a way that they don't want, you're gone. And so for me, that's when it really started to take shape. I'm really grateful that my wife and I had these health situations that made us question what we want to do with our lives and start building a life that makes more sense for us. And I think that was something I'm really grateful for.
Parallel to your business journey, what's been going on in your personal life this whole time?
Well, the personal life, I think the two biggest things, of course, are my kids. So I'm a huge parenting advocate. They're 10 and 8, and they're amazing. They're the loves of my life. I'm a huge advocate for parenting, particularly when kids are young, because this whole idea of building your business and your career and become the next vice president or get an extra $20,000 raise, or even your business, like building it to a point where you're, you know, a multimillionaire or whatever it might be. It's nice, but it's not that important. The most important thing is your children need your time. They're gonna grow up and say, "Was my mom and dad there for me?" And I think my kids will say, "Yeah, daddy was there for me." And that to me is the greatest legacy I'll ever have. So I'm really a huge parenting advocate. When my kids were born, I didn't spend that much time on business. In fact, my business launched the year before my first son showed up. And I was like a, you know, they say in the beginning, you got to be a 60-hour-a-week entrepreneur or plus, right? I was a 25-hour-a-week entrepreneur. I was really being a dad and having fun with the babies. And I'll never, even though it slowed my business significantly in the beginning, I will never regret that. So for me, parenting is a big piece. And then the second thing is the health journey. So diabetic. I also have challenges with binge eating and food addiction. And so food's been, trying to lose weight it's been a big part of my health journey the last 5-6 years. And I'll admit I struggle, you know, like I think I'm, excuse me, you know, I have different waves on the roller coaster of life. I'm more on a lower end right now than on a higher end, I would say. But it's always there. I'm always mindful of it. And one of the things I know about fitness is that it affects everything, your health. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, a better you is a better everything else. So if I can be better with my health and better with my fitness, then I'll be better as a dad, better as a friend, better as an employee, better as a leader, better at everything. So for me, that health thing is a big part of my life too.
So we've talked a lot about how you've gotten to where you are now. But can you take a few minutes and really brag on like how far you've come? Like how high up the mountain have you climbed? And what have you truly accomplished that you're the most proud of?
Wow. I think that for me, the mountain, gosh. I think number one, I think I'm an amazing dad. I'm an amazing parent. I completely am involved in their lives. I take care to nurture and guide and support and all that kind of stuff. And I think that ability to be like, you know, I think I'm a world-class parent. And having done that, I'm able to really help them. Number two, I think I feel confident that I'm a world-class speaker, and you know, been able with my ability to speak, I've been able to help transform people's lives and give them advice and content that even when I do little videos, like 1-2 minute videos, I still think it helps because I get messages saying it works. So for me, I think that's something I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the impact I've had as a speaker. And then I think the third thing is it fits with parenting, it fits with speaking, it fits with social media too. But I've learned to be extremely, I want to say grounded, calm, but empathy. You know, I don't yell at people. I calmly help people out. People come to me all the time. Like one of my friends, you know, she came to me because she had major crisis advice at her work and deal with some mental health issues. Another person came to me with major marriage problems they always come to me, and I'm not even in their circle of their 5 or 10 best friends. But then I say, why are you here? Like, well, you're just someone I trust, Bobby, and you're someone who's going to give me advice that I know that I can count on. And I do it based on empathy, and I do it based on being calm and not getting caught up in biases, not getting caught up in everything. Like even when I get trolls on Twitter, because I get them all the time, they tell me horrible things. But having that grounded, empathetic, kind of loving nature, I think, is something that I think has helped me tremendously. I'm very proud of how I'm able to deal with that, no matter what comes my way, whether it's, you know, my kids getting my case or my parents getting my case or work or colleagues or clients. And there's a lot of stress in the world. There is. Like, you know, don't get me wrong. I sometimes get bummed out by certain things going on with various things, politically, socially, whatnot. But I think that I also have a grounded, calm way of looking at it and seeing if there's something I can do about it. I'll do it. I'll talk about it. But I think that empathy and that groundedness is something that I think is probably one of my best legacies right now, because I still have a whole life to go, but I'm already like pretty zen, and that's good.
Where do you see yourself 5, 10, 20 years down the road?
Well, number one, healthier. You know, I have a vision for myself. Actually, it's about 10 years from now, 10 plus years from now, where I'm climbing up Machu Picchu, and I've already done this vision exercise. And this completely gray-haired man who's fit shows up. There's a gray-haired lady, that's my wife, and then these two strappingly beautiful, an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, a 20-year-old son and my 18-year-old daughter, and they're beautiful and they're healthy and they're vibrant. And that whole vision of being healthy and climbing Machu Picchu and taking that, the selfie at top of Machu Picchu with the villages below, like that's a great goal for me. I love that. That one's really awesome because it basically encapsulates my health journey and my parenting life, because at that point the kids are now adults and they're going to go off on their own lives, their own journey. So I love that one. The other one for me is from a business perspective, excuse me, helping a lot of people with having. I'd like to see some of the communities and programs that I've done. So my Speaker Mastermind program, my Patreon page, my Master Video program, all those programs are, have been used by thousands and thousands of people and have been able to launch their careers or their startups or their speaker businesses and take them to success and fulfillment. And the world has more fulfilled, aligned people that are not following a path defined by other people. So for me, like, it's just more about doing more of that. And you'll note that I don't even relate it to money. Money is nice, but like, if you ask me if I could get, 1 million people to, watch my content and feel inspired to make a change in their life, and I don't make anything from it, that's great. That would be amazing. I would be so happy to hear that, to have an audience or followership that I've been able to impact. That to me would be amazing. So those are probably the two things that I'm looking at, in terms of the next 10 years are about my family, my health. And then for my business, I'd love to see just more scale, because as a speaker, one of the things is, you speak and you get paid, you speak and get paid. So it doesn't scale. If I get hit by a bus, it's over. So I'm actually working on creating scalable ones. I'm building communities and building programs like the ones I mentioned to try to create that scalability for myself and for my kids, so we don't have to worry about certain things. So that's kind of where I'd like to be.
When you think of connection, what is your philosophy on building deep, meaningful, and genuine connection with another person?
Great question. And, I'm all about the power of connection. And that was my first TEDx talk. I think the general way to create deep connection is to, number one, understand yourself. So understand who you are, what drives you, what are your motivations, what's your values, principles, things like that. Number two, from that, can you then determine what do you genuinely care about in terms of life and in people? And then three, when you meet people, really take the time to invest in who they are, understand their beliefs, their values, their brand, and ask really genuine, deep questions that are brave and bold. Don't ask just the basic. So what do you do? What's your job like? Where'd you go to school? No, ask about really deep questions. And in fact, you've done some really good ones. Talk about your childhood, talk about your parents. Holy cow, these are really deep questions. I would actually ask the deep questions. I would say, look, you have to take that risk to ask the deep questions. And more importantly, share vulnerability on yourself, because the more you share your own vulnerability, the more likely they're going to be willing to share their vulnerability. So I'm openly talking about my health struggles. I'm openly talking about my struggles in my career and or even as a parent, because we all have that. We all have those challenges. And I think by being vulnerable and being open, you're going to create a more deep, profound connection. And finally, connection takes work. It doesn't happen right away. You have to follow up. So if I have a deep conversation with somebody, I need to follow up and continue that conversation, have another conversation, and keep going, because it does take work. Once you get to that point where you're like really deeply connected with someone, then it's great. Then it's like you could have a year go by and it wouldn't matter, because when you see them, like, oh my gosh. But getting to that point where you've established this incredible trust, this incredible bond with somebody, it takes work. But when you get there, it's amazing. And so I think all of us should be continually working to build deep relationships. And on that point, you're going to find people where it's not happening. In fact, I was talking about this just earlier with my wife today, where she has some friends where it's not working out for her, even though she meets them for coffees and lunches or whatever. And she's thinking of just letting that go. She'd rather spend more time with the ones that are turning into something. And I agree. I think that, I meet people for lunch, and if it's not going somewhere, I need to create more space and focus on the ones where I feel like I'm getting far more value and far more connection from them, because that's, to me, far more fulfilling for my life than the ones who just talk about surface stuff like, sports or the basic news or other people.
When do you feel that somebody else is doing a really good job of connecting with you? Like, and it might be very similar to what you just said, but when do you feel the most connected to other people?
So I'd say three things. So one is they ask me questions about myself. I've spent a lifetime asking people questions, but most people don't ask questions back or don't reciprocate. It's just the way they are, and that's fine. I'm very proactive. I'm very extroverted, and so I've been doing this for years, so it's very easy for me. But they don't ask questions back. So when they start actually asking questions, that gets my attention. The second piece is do they share their own kind of stuff? Because if they don't, right away, it's not going to work. Like, if you're not going to share any of your challenges, flaws, crises, dark moments, whatever, it's going to be less of a connection. The ones who actually are willing to do that, that really also gets my attention, because like, wow, okay, this person, and not in the way of like a rant, like ranting about life. It's about saying, well, here's something I struggle with, and they share something to make me feel better or to make me feel supported or connected. That to me is amazing. And then the third thing I'm going to say, and my wife she's now an entrepreneur, so she's learning this too, but she's like, wow, she's like, amazing. Most people don't follow up. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, I can tell you honestly, even from my closest circle of friends, let's say 50 to 100 people, my closest circle of friends, people just don't follow up. They don't proactively reach out. I'm the one who's almost always reaching out. So what gets my attention is when a friend or a good friend proactively reaches out saying, I want to see you. I want to spend time with you. I want to, I have some friends who I think are just really amazing people. And I've dedicated a lot of time and energy to them. But it's weird. Like, there's a few, like in 10, 15 years, they've never come to like my birthday party, even though they live right downtown. Like, I understand people are busy and have lives, but can't you come once? I mean, if you had one, I've been to your birthday party. Like, it's a weird thing, but there's certain people who just don't do that. They don't follow up. So even among my close friends. So what really gets my attention are the ones who, and it's rare, the ones who actually follow up with me and want to spend time with me and invest in me and invest that time. That to me, yeah, it's great. Like a friend recently messaged me. She lives like about an hour and a half away, but says, listen, I'm coming to town. I really want to spend time with you. I'm like, okay. And that's good. I love that. Another friend who actually lives in Senegal, and she's coming into town, into the country, and she's messaging me on WhatsApp. I want to meet with you. I'm like, I love that. That's such loyalty and connection that it makes me want to go to the moon for that. So that really gets my attention.
What's your greatest theory?
Theory?
Yep.
Theory. Oh my gosh. I've never had that question before. I mean, I have theories on lots of things. I have theories of life and things like that. Man, I don't want to be stumped here. I mean, I have lots of small theories, but I mean, there's theories of life that I follow or adhere to. A lot of them have to do with what I call the power of connection. So years ago, I started this thing on Twitter called the power of connection rules, and I came up with 350 rules that I just kind of started putting out there. But the one that I think is really interesting is that every single connection that I make, no matter how far apart you are, no matter how much time has gone by, when I meet someone, one of my theories is if you can treat them in the same way, in the same manner in which you felt the deepest, most profound connection with them in your life, they will reciprocate. And it's amazing. So there's one friend of mine who I hadn't seen in like 12 years. But I remember at the time we were like very man and we were super close friends, and we had this most profound conversation. And so in doing so, one of the things I did was before I saw them, I sent a message saying, hey, remember this? This is one of the most amazing times I ever had with you. And when I see you, like, this is the type of person that I remember you as, even though I haven't seen you in 12 years. And then when I saw them finally, they were in Europe, I greeted them in the same kind of manner and affection and love that moment had taught me. And as soon as I did that, amazing, she completely melted, and we had the most amazing 2 days of conversations and discussion, just like the old days. And that theory for me is great. Like you can do that with anybody, because if you're feeling like, let's say you have an argument with your dad, because I had a fight with my dad last year. I have to think about the best times of my dad, and when I see him again, I still have to process those emotions of getting over that argument. But if I go back to the original thing, then say, hey, listen, Dad, I appreciate you for this. Remember this memory we had? Okay. And then when I see him, big hug, and it works. It actually works 99% of the time. And so for me, that's a big theory of connection, which is treating people and remembering that the best moment of connection you ever had. And when you see them again, it can really make a big difference.
So, Bobby, I want to thank you so much for coming on the interview today and sharing this time with me and being willing to go deep and talk about all these things. It's truly been a pleasure. I have 2 more quick questions for you, and then let's wrap up and tell people about that freebie. So the first one is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I did not ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
I think we covered quite a bit there, Ben. That was quite good. Yeah, yeah, I think you did a good job. I mean, because we covered my interests and things that I'm doing. I mean, I think the only thing I will say is that I'm very political. So that's something that's a big part of me. Although a lot of people talk about politics, or people say, I'm not political, but I'm like, look, if you care about your health and the health of others, if you care about kids, you care about education, you care about, life as we know it, you care about the planet, there's things we care about. We care about money. We care about, we all care about things. So I think everyone should be political at some point because we all have things we care about. So I'm pretty political in that, in terms of expressing values of particularly fighting social inequality and justice. I'm big on diversity, big on things like that, big on fairness and trying to fight hypocrisy and ignorance and fear. So those are things that I'm really big on, and that's something that's important to me.
I'm 24 and I have a couple businesses,
Okay.
but and I say this all the time, and I'll continue to say it because it's very true. But this show is absolutely my greatest passion.
I can tell.
Knowing that, what question should I be asking you specifically, somebody with your experience, with your knowledge, with your gifts? What question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Well, you really ask. Well, first off, you ask very, very interesting, insightful, tough questions. You wouldn't think to ask. I don't know, because I think you've done a really good job of covering all the bases. So it's kind of hard to say. Maybe, and you also even went personal, which is quite interesting. It might be interesting to talk about questions like, we mentioned fears. You mentioned maybe talking about regret. That's something it's interesting. It's an interesting discussion. Talking about work-life balance, how to figure that out. Talking about burnout. I think that's another really important thing. So those are some questions that might be interesting to dive into or to ask about. Yeah.
So, Bobby, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the interview today. And, I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. This is really good. I love what you talked about, and I've been really enjoying this conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Me too, my friend. And to everybody who's listening, watching, I want to thank y'all so much. Y'all are the reason that I do this. And, I love y'all and, your support and coming back and listening and watching. I really can't thank you enough. So thank you. So Bobby, you want to talk about the freebie we have for him and then wrap us on up?
Sure. So, I mean, the freebie I have for people is, so I have a couple of programs, Networking Mastery. I have a speaker mastermind program. I have a Patreon page where I share insights with the community. But my speaker mastermind is a 12-week program. But the first module, training module, is called Networking, Why Networking and How to Build a Winning Mindset. So for everybody here, I want to give everybody a free copy of this training. It's about an hour long. So I want everyone to have a chance of seeing that one totally for free. And if you like it, that's great. You can find out more about my Patreon page or on Facebook or LinkedIn. But I want to share that with everybody. And at the same time, if you only want to contact me, our website's called realan.com. And I'm everywhere on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it. I'd love to hear from you and see you guys. And if you have questions, you can ask me across all those different channels.
Fantastic. And, you know, I really want to stress the importance of networking and mindset, because what we've been talking about, you know, a lot of the foundational pieces of your career, it seems like, came from networking and mindset, right? Being able to network and surround yourself with impactful people, being able to have that foundation to go and ask the questions to understand your personal brand and dive into and explore your own narrative. And then to have the mindset to be able to say, hey, you know, this engineering thing isn't working out for me. Like, I need to change. And to actually like have the mental fortitude to go through with it and to make that life change, to make that pivot, to get re-energized, refocused. So it seems like those two are really some concrete building blocks to your success. And I'm very appreciative of you offering that module for free, because I know how much work goes into producing an hour of content. It really does take a lot. So I appreciate you giving that away for free. And I want to encourage everybody to go to projectegg.co/Bobby to go and pick that up. Y'all, it's going to be awesome. So thank you again, Bobby. Thank you very much. Everybody's listening. Thank y'all. Let's rock it. Let's change the world.